On a cold winter night in a small village surrounded by dark forests, a young man named Arham was returning home. The air was unusually still. A thick fog slowly spread across the narrow dirt road. It was past midnight. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath his shoes. He walked, hands in pockets, trying to ignore a strange feeling creeping into his chest. Everyone knew about the old abandoned house near the graveyard. No one talked about it after dark. Tonight, unfortunately, Arham had to pass right in front of it. As he neared the broken gate, the temperature dropped. His breath became visible, thicker than before. Then he heard a faint whisper. So soft, he thought it was just the wind. But then he heard it again, clearer. It sounded like someone softly calling his name. Arham. He stopped. His heart pounded. The fog was too dense to see more than a few steps ahead. There was no one on the road. Trying to stay calm, he told himself it was imagination. Maybe the wind was playing tricks. He started walking again, faster. But the whispers followed him. Arham. Don't go. The voice sounded closer, as if someone was behind him. He turned, but saw only empty road and swirling fog. He could hear footsteps behind him, slow and dragging, matching his pace. His breathing became heavy. He increased his speed, and so did the footsteps. Panic took over. He tried to run, but the fog became thicker, blinding him. The familiar road felt strange. That's when he noticed something ahead through the fog, near the gate of the abandoned house. Stood a tall, dark figure. It didn't move. It just stood there, unnaturally still. Arham froze. The figure had no clear face, only two faint glowing eyes staring directly at him. The whispers turned into a low, chilling laugh that echoed through the silent night. Arham felt his legs weaken, but fear forced him to move. He turned and ran as fast as he could. The footsteps behind him became louder, faster, almost catching up. He could feel cold air brushing against his neck, as if someone was reaching for him. Finally, he saw his house in the distance. With the last bit of strength, he rushed to the door, unlocked it with shaking hands, and slammed it shut behind him. He leaned against the door, breathing heavily, trying to convince himself that he was safe. After a few seconds, the outside became completely silent. No whispers. No footsteps. Slowly, he gathered the courage to look outside through the small window beside the door. The fog was still there, but the road was empty. Relieved, he looked down at the ground. Near his doorstep, and his heart nearly stopped. There were muddy footprints leading up to his door. They were larger than his, and they were not his. The footprints stopped right behind where he had been standing. Terrified, he locked all the windows and went straight to his room, refusing to think about what had happened. That night, he barely slept. Around 3 a.m., he suddenly woke up to a faint sound inside his house. It was the same dragging noise he had heard earlier. Slowly, he sat up in bed. The sound was coming from the hallway. Step. Drag. Step. Drag. It was moving closer to his room. He held his breath as the sound stopped right outside his door. The doorknob slowly began to turn. Arham felt completely frozen, unable to scream or move. The door creaked open slightly, but the hallway outside was dark. Then he heard the whisper again, this time right inside his room. You shouldn't have looked back. The next morning, the villagers found the door of the abandoned house wide open. Strange footprints circled around it, disappearing into the foggy road. Some villagers claimed they heard whispers near the graveyard that night. As for Arham, he was never the same again. He refused to leave his house after sunset. Within a few weeks, he moved away from the village entirely. However, people say that on cold, foggy nights, if you walk past that abandoned house, you might hear a soft voice calling your name. And if you look back, you may see glowing eyes watching you from the mist. On the outskirts of a small town, There was an old railway station that had been closed for more than 20 years. No trains stopped there anymore, and most people avoided the area after sunset. But one evening, a young photographer named Zayn decided to visit the station to capture some moody, abandoned shots for his social media page. He had heard rumors that the place was haunted, but he didn't believe in such things. To him, it was just an empty building with a dramatic history. By the time he reached the station, the sun had already disappeared behind thick clouds. The platform was cracked, weeds growing between the tiles, and the rusty railway track stretched endlessly into darkness. The station building itself looked lifeless broken windows, peeling paint, and an old clock above the entrance frozen at 11:17. Zayn stepped inside, his camera hanging around his neck. The air smelled damp and dusty. Every step he took echoed loudly in the empty hall. He turned on his camera and began taking photos of the ticket counter, the old wooden benches, and the faded signboards. Everything seemed normal quiet, but normal. Then he heard a distant metallic sound. Like a train approaching, he stopped and listened carefully. The tracks outside had been disconnected years ago. No trains passed this route anymore. Yet the sound grew louder, metal grinding against metal, wheels rolling on rails. Confused, Zayn walked back onto the platform. The night had become strangely darker, and a cold wind swept across the tracks. In the distance, through the fog, he saw a faint light. It looked like a train headlight. "That's impossible," he whispered. The light moved closer, and the sound of the train became deafening. But there was something wrong. There was no vibration on the ground, no shaking of the platform. It was as if the sound existed, but the train did not. Suddenly, the light stopped right in front of him. But there was no train. Just empty tracks. Zayn's heart raced. He quickly lifted his camera and snapped a photo of the tracks. When he checked the screen, his blood ran cold. In the photo, a full train was visible on the tracks, old-fashioned, dark, with broken windows. And inside the windows, pale faces stared out at him. He slowly looked up from the camera. The tracks were still empty. Hands shaking, he took another photo. Again, the train appeared in the picture. This time, the doors of the train were open, and one of the figures inside was standing on the platform right behind him. Zayn felt a cold breath on his neck. He didn't dare turn around. Very slowly, he looked at the camera screen again and switched it to selfie mode. On the screen, he was not alone. Behind him stood a tall figure wearing an old railway conductor uniform. Its face was pale and cracked, its eyes completely white. It was smiling a wide, unnatural smile. The station clock above the entrance suddenly made a loud ticking sound. Zayn glanced up. The clock was moving. The hands slowly shifted from 11:17 to 11:18. The metallic train sound returned, louder than before. This time, he felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. A strong wind rushed past him toward the tracks, pulling at his clothes. It felt like something was dragging him forward. He dropped his camera and tried to run toward the exit, but the station doors slammed shut on their own. The platform lights flickered on for a brief second, revealing shadowy figures standing all along the tracks, staring at him silently. The last thing Zayn heard was a deep voice whispering near his ear, "The train only stops once." The next morning, a security guard passing by the old station noticed a camera lying on the platform. The building was empty, no sign of Zayn anywhere. When the police checked the camera, they found dozens of photos of the same train arriving at the station. In the final image, taken at exactly 11:18 p.m., the train doors were closed, and inside one of the windows, a new face stared out. It was Zayn. On a stormy night in a quiet town, a university student named Samir was alone in his rented apartment. The rain poured heavily against the windows, and thunder shook the walls every few minutes. The electricity had been flickering since evening, and by midnight, the entire building went dark. Samir lit a candle and tried to calm himself. He wasn't afraid of storms, but tonight felt different. The silence between the thunderclaps felt too deep, too heavy. Around 4:45 a.m., his phone suddenly vibrated on the table. There was no internet connection, no signal bars, yet a message appeared on the screen from an unknown number. It said, "Why did you move into my room?" Samir frowned, assuming it was some kind of prank. He typed back, "Wrong number." The message was delivered instantly. A few seconds later, another text arrived, "I'm under the bed." Samir's hands froze. His heart started pounding loudly in his chest. He slowly looked down at the dark space beneath his bed. The candlelight barely reached the floor, leaving most of it in shadow. He told himself it had to be someone joking, maybe one of his friends trying to scare him. Gathering courage, he bent down slightly and lifted the hanging bedsheet. There was nothing there. He let out a nervous laugh and stood up again. "Very funny," he whispered to himself. But before he could relax, his phone vibrated again. "I said I'm under the bed, not yours." A chill ran down his spine. If not his bed, then whose? At that exact moment, he heard a slow creaking sound from the hallway outside his bedroom. Step. Pause. Step. The apartment had only one entrance, and he clearly remembered locking it. The footsteps were heavy, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. Samir grabbed the candle and slowly walked toward his bedroom door. His breathing became shallow as the footsteps stopped right outside. The doorknob began to turn slowly. He stepped back, unable to speak. The door creaked open, revealing only darkness beyond it. The candle flame flickered wildly, as if reacting to a sudden cold wind. Then he noticed something horrifying: wet footprints on the floor, leading from the main entrance all the way to his bedroom door. Rainwater dripped from them, forming small puddles. But the storm had stopped 15 minutes ago. His phone buzzed again. With trembling hands, he looked at the screen. "You left the window open." He quickly turned around toward his bedroom window. It was closed, locked. But the curtains were slowly moving, as if something had just passed behind them. His breathing grew louder in his ears. The candle suddenly went out, throwing the room into complete darkness. In the pitch-black silence, he heard breathing, not his own. It was coming from the corner of the room. Slow, deep, unnatural. Samir tried to move, but his legs felt weak. His phone screen lit up again, the only source of light now. Another message appeared. "Now I'm beside you." He felt cold air brush against his shoulder. Very slowly, he turned his head. For a split second, illuminated by the faint glow of his phone, he saw a pale face inches away from his own, its eyes completely black, its mouth stretched into an impossible smile. The next morning, the landlord found Samir's apartment door wide open. The room was empty. No signs of struggle. No broken windows, just muddy footprints starting from the bedroom and leading under the bed. To this day, no one knows what happened to him. But sometimes new tenants in that apartment complain about strange messages appearing on their phones late at night. And they all say the same thing. The last message always reads, "Check under the bed."